Good afternoon. Hello. Hello. 안녕하세요. 베라리 민족 해외 사업부 디렉터 마이크 김입니다. 반갑습니다. 한국 온 지 4개월 되어가지고 한국말 잘 못해가지고 죄송합니다. 그러니까 좀 천천히 얘기하고 영어를 좀 많이 쓸 거예요. So today I'm going to talk about the differences between the two cultures of Seoul and Silicon Valley. But before I begin, I just want to say thank you very much for letting me be here. 여기 처음 와가지고 이름이 잘 몰랐어요. So when I first got here, I said Kim Mike or Mike Kim, and there was some confusion. 그 베라리 민족 첫 날에 들어가지고 I didn't know what to say, so I said Kim Mike. So this is my pad. 베라리 민족에서 우리 다 이거 메고, but now my name is Kim Mike, but you can call me Mike. Before I begin, I wanted to just introduce myself. I grew up in the Bay Area. And this is me as a little kid. 우리 어머니 이 얘기 많이 했는데 어렸을 때 좀 귀엽는데 지금은 좀 안 된 것 같아요. 우리 어머니 말씀이 맞은 것 같아요. I graduated from UC Davis, and after I graduated there, I moved back to the Bay Area. And there I started my career at Zynga. And Zynga is, in America, the largest social gaming site. I was a marketing manager there. And then I went on to become the director of business development at Monster.com. And then 베라리 민족 오기 전에 3년에서 링크드인에서 일했어요. 거기서도 해외 사업을 많이 했어요. Now I work as the 베라리 민족 Global Partnerships Director. And just in case, I want to know, 베라리 민족 쓰는 분 있어요? Alright, 요기요는 아니고 베라리 민족. Okay. 만약에 오늘 지금 티켓을 주문하고 싶으면 you can go ahead and do it right now. I wouldn't mind. And I'm pretty sure you're bored of my introduction. But there's a reason why I wanted to introduce myself. 저는 지금 그런 특별한 사람 아니에요. I really believe that there is a huge opportunity in Seoul right now. I honestly believe there is no greater time to be in Korea than right now. You must be thinking, how could this guy leave the Bay Area? You must be thinking, 이 사람은 좀 이상하다. 어떻게 좀 미쳤다. 여기 한국 와가지고 샌프란시스코 좋은 라이프인데 why did he come? But I'm going to get to that at the very, very end. So today I'm going to talk about the fact that I am one of many people. This is a great time to be in Korea, and I am one of many people that want to be a part of something bigger here. So with that, let's go into the presentation. 오늘 presentation에 세 섹션이 있어요. 그 해외 사업, and then I have 사업 전략, and then just kind of the bigger picture. So we're going to go through each kind of three sections. 그 말씀하기 전에 I just wanted to say I don't want you to think about this as 한국 사업 문화가 미국보다 더 좋고 or 미국 사업 문화가 한국보다 더 좋은 거. I just think that there are differences, and I think it's important that we recognize them and just have fun with it. Also, 그 베라리 민족 회사 문화가 좀 it's a little bit special. It's actually kind of unique. It's actually I had to 다른 친구들 많이 물어봤어요. 그 어떤 문화 있나? Because the 베라리 민족 문화 is a little bit different. It's actually 좀 실리콘밸리 같아요. So I kind of did a lot of research, and hopefully we can have some fun together on this presentation. So 하기 전에 I always like to ask 예빈, 괜찮아요? And she says good. So let's begin. The first thing is titles. When I got here, there are so many titles. 대표님, 이사님, 수석님. And I wasn't used to it. Actually, in the United States, you just call people by their name. And you just say Mike. And it's a very interesting cultural difference, I think, that you constantly have to talk to people with their name and then their title. I can tell you kind of a funny story. 그 첫날 들어가지고 베라리민 첫날 들어갔을 때 I actually said, 안녕하세요, 봉진. And they were like, 대표님. I didn't really know I was supposed to say that. But I was so used to calling my CEOs, hey, Jeff, hey, Mike, hey, Charlie. And so 그 title 붙이는 거 처음이에요. I think it's a little bit interesting. I think we already know who the title is. But that was kind of a big difference that I noticed. The next one is 회식 and teamwork. And this is kind of an interesting cultural difference. A lot of times when we have lunch, we spend maybe 15, 10분, 15분, 20분 at lunch, and it's all takeout. A sandwich, salad, a soup. We want to get in, eat, and go home. 원래 그 빨리 퇴근하고 싶어서 1시간 점심을 가는 거 좀 힘든 것 같아요. 원래 그 Google, LinkedIn, Twitter all have cafeterias. I think you've seen the kitchens. 근데 그거 왜 있으면 그 점심 시간에서 식당을 가면 걸어가야 되고 그거 앉아야 되고 주문해야 되고 it's such a long time. And so it's right in the middle of the day. So actually having a cafeteria right in the office makes things very efficient. You want to work. You want to get things fast. So a lot of times I just would go downstairs, get a sandwich, and come back to my desk and eat. And this is kind of a cafeteria, but most people just go to a Subway or a fast food place, get something to go, take out, and go. In Korea, we have 회식s. And actually, 솔직히 말하면, I really love 회식s. They're really quite fun. 이만큼 소주 처음 마시는 거예요. It's really a lot. But there's an important point here. I think that 회식s are an awesome opportunity to get to know your teammates. And I think so many times in the American business culture, it's so business. I mean, we make friends and 아주 친한데, but here I feel like there's a much closer bond. It kind of feels like a 가족. And I actually really like that. And so I actually think that the 회식 culture is really nice. And this is some pictures of actually my team. We all went out and we eat a lot of samgyeopsal and we drink a lot of somek. And it's a lot of fun. And Snoop Dogg thinks it's pretty cool too. Idea sharing. So one very big difference that I got here, and I think Taeho님 also talked about it, was the difference between 네 and 왜. So many times, I guess just being raised up in the United States, you were supposed to challenge your teacher. You're supposed to challenge your parents. You're supposed to challenge the way of thinking. So 예를 들면 대표님이 오늘은 우리 오른쪽 갈 거야. Most people, I bet you around like 99% say 네. Right? We're going to go right. But I was always kind of, and I think not just me, but many people have always thought, but 왜? Why not 왼쪽? And it's not to say that 왼쪽 is right, but it's just about asking why. And I've noticed that being a very big difference because when you are in a company, you have been hired. 그 회사가 너를 뽑았어요. That means you have value. You have intrinsic value. And so when people say 오늘은 오른쪽 갈 거야, it doesn't necessarily mean we have to go right. They want to know, should we go right? And I think that's a very big difference. And so I think that this generation, all of us have the opportunity to kind of change that. So this is kind of a good example. I think a lot of times when there's something stuck in your teeth, a lot of times in Korea, they don't really want to say anything, even though you know you want to. You know, you gotta say, "Hi, 잠시만요. 이빨에 여기 뭐 있는 것 같아요." But that feels kind of uncomfortable, I think. Whereas here, I would hate to walk around with, kimbap in my teeth. And so in the United States, I think there's much more a culture from the ground up, as a young student, talking about the fact that, well, I have an idea. This is what I think. And I think that has to go with the education system, and that's a whole different topic, but it's something that I've noticed, and I don't think one is better than the other. A lot of times when people have too many ideas, that could be a problem too, because everybody thinks that they have the best idea. But I do think that there is a cultural difference that I've seen. All right, let's move into business strategy. Well, EXO, I always like to talk about EXO giving me the okay, so I don't know if you guys ever see that. Partnerships. I think partnerships are a very interesting way to look into the dynamic of how a company thinks. How does it grow? Partnerships to me symbolize a company has achieved the status of wanting to do something bigger that it cannot do on its own. And so how we approach how we work with other people is a very interesting and insightful way to see how does this business actually think. I think a lot of times that I've seen here in Korea, it's about relationships. How well do you know this person? Who is this person? Does he have nice parents? 부모님 어떤 사람이에요? And so I think a lot of times we spend a lot of times just getting to know the other person. And so you have a lot of moments like this where you go to dinner, you go to coffee, and I've gone to so many coffees in Korea. I cannot drink any more coffee. But it's a lot about building relationships. Whereas I think in the United States, I have actually done a business partnership with someone I've never met. Video conference calls, Skype, FaceTime, conference calls. The most important thing is whether or not these two companies can work together. And so a lot of times who this person is or what school he went to, does he have nice parents, can he drink a lot, really doesn't matter in the business context of the United States, but I think it matters a lot here, which I think is good. I mean, relationships are key and fundamental to building great companies, but I think here it takes it to a different level. Another thing that's a little bit different is how they approach the partnership. I think in Korea, they kind of ask this, 이 회사가 우리한테 어떻게 도와줄까? Whereas in the United States, we kind of think, 우리가 이 회사를 어떻게 도와줄까? So even though the partnership may be exactly the same, the perspective in which you go into the partnership, I think is very, very different. Even though both can achieve the same thing, I think how you begin the conversation matters a lot. And I think I've seen this a little bit more, the discrepancy this way. Now, this is kind of a weird picture, but I put this up here because I think that this is an example of a perfect partnership. And the way I think as we move forward, this can really help all of us in developing great partnerships. So this is actually a crab, 게, and on top of it is a sea anemone. I'm not really sure how to say that one, but this crab eats all the dead fish at the bottom. And when that fish breaks apart, the sea anemone here eats it, eats the small pieces. But on top of that, the sea anemone protects the crab. 뭐 다른 거를 게를 먹고 싶으면 그 sea anemone protects it with the tentacles. And so when I think of partnerships, this is kind of the viewpoint where it's not a winner take all. 한 사람이 다 이기는 거 아니고요. It's just how can two companies benefit from each other's great traits. And I actually see good examples of that happening. Actually, this is a very good example where I think we're taking on a different approach. If you look at Samsung and Apple, they've been fighting for a long time. Who has the best phone? But you know what? They found out a great way for a wonderful partnership. Samsung is great at hardware. It developed the A9 chip that goes into the iPhone 6. And so you find yourself with these two great giants figure out a way to work with each other. And this is a symbol of the crab and the sea anemone, or the sea anemone and the crab. By all cause, don't do this. This is not a partnership, and this is just an example of sometimes people going at it a little bit too hard. Recruiting. A lot of times, I think in Korea, there tends to be a sense of recruiting within the family. And it's very different. I think there seems to be, I know that there's a big emphasis on who you know in the relationship. So 그 다른 사람을 뽑으면 it seems like they really want to know kind of who knows this person. Is it your 아버지's 친구, 딸, 선배, something, right? And so whereas the United States is a little bit different. When you're finding and recruiting somebody, it doesn't really matter how you know them, but what their talent is. And here's why. When you recruit from just your own network, one person may only know a certain number of people. 그 사람들이 only knows a certain number of people. And in the end, the world is actually kind of small. So when you're hiring great talent, and that's what builds great companies, the people inside them, you want to make sure that you get the right person. And it's hard to do that when the network is small. Another thing that's very, very different here is the resume. We ask for blood type, A, B, O. You ask for the picture, how do you look? What do your parents do? And this is kind of an older resume, and I pulled it out. But just as an example of how the differences are, in the United States, it doesn't really, I don't think, matter what you look like. Your blood type doesn't matter. And it's more of a hunting scheme, and this is kind of the best way I describe it. When you're looking to hire great talent, you're just going to go for it. You could just say, I want someone from Stanford who speaks Spanish and Japanese that worked at Naver for 2 years, and you're going to find that exact person. And that may be a global search. It may take a long time to find that exact person, but it's worth it because finding that person can help gain your company miles. And so I think that's a different word. There seems to be a limited number of network, even if your network is big. But in this case, it seems like you have more of a global recruiting scheme. Failure. Nobody likes to fail. I hate failing. But one of the things I've noticed is that I think there just seems to be a greater fear of failure. Now, nobody likes to fail. Failing absolutely sucks. However, I think that sometimes with the fear of failure means you avoid the opportunity for something great. I think a lot of times we say, oh, I have an idea. I want to do something. But the fear of failing here is so high because you're going to be the guy that failed, that people don't take the opportunity. Whereas I think in the United States, failure actually equals opportunity. You did something and you learned. And you may have failed, but you have only failed in your own eyes if you let yourself think that. I think that the reason I'm here is actually because I've met so many great young people here. Our generation has a ton of great ideas. That's why I moved here. But when I tell them, when are you going to start it? When are you going to do that? They say, I'm not quite sure yet. I'm not sure if I could tell my parents I'm going to do a startup. I'm not quite sure. The brand name's not that good. I need that big treble name. But in the United States, I think young kids, even from high school, say, I'm going to quit high school. I'm going to go start a company. Now, don't do that. That's too crazy. But a lot of times, I feel like people are afraid of failure. And I think you guys are brilliant. And there's absolutely no need to be afraid of that because it's going to be the first step to the next big thing for you. Tired? Tired? No? Okay. The bigger picture. This is kind of my last section. And these are kind of just bigger topic themes that I want to talk about. The first one is government's role. It's very interesting. The United States pretty much created a capitalistic society, and it allows people to just kind of go. Build a company. Go do it. We're here. We built the roads. We'll help you with the traffic lights, but we want you to innovate. They don't really meddle too much. We have private investors, so all the great venture capitalists that are here, they are investing in companies on their own accord. Whereas in Korea, I think Korea is playing a huge, massive role in investing in the next generation of companies, which I think is actually wonderful because they're going to have to do that anyway. I think they've now invested over $3 billion. And so they're really, really fundamentally playing a big role in how we develop new companies. And I think it's awesome. But I also want to talk about the dangers of having government that involved in private business. And here's a good example. Everyone know Uber? Everyone's heard of Uber? So whether or not you like Uber or dislike Uber, I think the interesting thing about this particular case study is how Uber was treated. Now, if you look at Kakao Taxi, Limo Taxi, it's pretty much the same idea. It's innovation. They like the idea. No one's going to argue that the idea was bad. But the way Uber was treated by the government is something that actually we should all be a little concerned about. Because that means innovation may be treated that way. When one company has that much more of an edge just because, that may be good or bad for all of us. But I think it's just something we should pay attention to. And it's a very interesting case. I'm following that case quite closely just to see how is Uber going to thrive here or not. But watching the Seoul government interact with this company is quite interesting. And here's kind of my analogy is that when innovation is going one way, and you know the world is going that way, going upstream is quite difficult. If you're the Yona here and you're going upstream and the rest of the world is kind of going this way, it's a hard battle going up. And so I just think in the end, to avoid staying with Internet Explorer, which is so tightly intertwined here, we have to make sure that there's kind of a separation between the private sector and the government sector. Because when they're too tight, it becomes one thing. And it becomes one thing, you really don't know what's going on. And so as we move forward, I think that this generation has an awesome opportunity to build great companies on its own way without too much of the government meddling in. Corporate philanthropy. This is kind of a personal thing that I is near and dear to my heart, and I think is very, very important. In the United States, there's no such thing as, one person he's a philanthropist, he's a deputy, so he has a lot of money, so he's a philanthropist, and other people are not. It should be part of the culture. It should be a part of what we do. Pereri Minjok has an awesome philanthropic program where we give uyu to elderly people. And I want to see that more and more, whereas actually I don't see it that much. Now, when you think about companies like LinkedIn, Salesforce, Yelp, Twitter, all of them, as part of its core mission, have philanthropic programs. All the young employees are always asking, how should we give back? It's not a should we, it's how. How should we give back? We have way too much money. We're doing too good. How should we give back? And I think that I have seen so much of this generation saying, we want to give back to something bigger than ourselves. And I think that there's an opportunity in Korea to start to build that kind of culture where we constantly think, when I build a company, I'm still going to figure out a way to give back. And that's something that's very interesting that I don't think is quite established here, but a lot of young professionals in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, that's just a part of life. Every week you're going to go donate some money. Every week you're going to go do some meals. It's a part of life. It's not something that you do on the side. And I think when we do that, it actually benefits all of us, benefits the entire ecosystem. This is something I read the other day, and kind of a personal challenge that I wanted to put out to all of you. Out of all the economically developed countries, in Korea, the elderly population is the most poor. Now, this generation is the one that built this country, the one that got us to be where we are now, to have the opportunity. So when I see this fact, it really breaks my heart. But I also have great hope, because I think we're all here to build the next generation of companies that will give back not to the community, but to this country. And so when I see facts like this, I have no doubt that in 5 or 10 years, we're going to change this. This is my last topic, female leadership. Now, this isn't doing very well. I'm not going to say that the United States is leading the charge on female leadership, but I think this is an incredibly important topic, especially in Silicon Valley right now, where this battle is taking place. Having 50% of your population community move forward actually means nobody has moved forward. As a community, as a nation, as a startup village, we all have the responsibility to move forward together. And I've only been here for 4 months, but if you take a look at just this group, you've got female CEOs and leaders, just even within this group. And I haven't seen many female CEOs and leaders, but I know that there are. I've talked to so many of my female friends that want to build something great, and I know that they have the ability to do it, but I think we all have to play a role. This is not a female issue. This is not a male issue. This is a community issue. This is an issue for all of us. And I think as we continue to build, I think we have to constantly uplift not just women, but all of us. And I think it starts at a young age. We want young girls to think that they could be leaders, because I know young men could be leaders, but we have to constantly remind everyone, because when we all move forward, it's a big deal. And obviously, she really agrees too. So I wanted to finish just by saying that, one of the things I moved my entire life out here for is because I see great change. I see something very, very exciting happening in Seoul right now. This company, Perari Minjok, is, I think, one of the, I'm personally biased, but I think it's leading the way. Our deputy name is so progressive. He is an amazing guy, and he has developed a way for young people to feel happy at work. They feel excited. They're constantly ready to go. And it is a completely different field than from some of my friends who work at the larger companies. And we have great teamwork. We have fun birthdays. We have, theme days. And I think this shows that we're moving that way. And so my very, very last comment is, I want to talk about the best startup in the world. And all of you know it. It is Seoul. For the past 50 years, this country has come a long, long way. And it's because of the drive and ambition of all of you. And I think actually, like I said from the beginning, I genuinely believe that this is probably the best time to be in Korea, because there's an opportunity. This is the turning point for all of us to say, we are going to build the next generation of great companies, because for the past 50 years, there have been great leaders, but the next great leader is among one of you. And so I'm excited to be here. I want to thank you for your time, and happy to have this invitation. Thank you so much. 감사합니다.